Chapter 7, Motivating Exceptional Service. When you look at this chapter, the key thing for everyone to understand is the number of students in this class, myself. There may be some similarities, but we're all motivated by different things. And so to define it, in my opinion, and you'll see a definition in the book, but I think you also need to go back and look at, from an individual standpoint, what is it? Your employees, as we kind of go into this chapter, what is it that motivates them? What is it that motivates you? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This determines career paths. This determines jobs. This determines length of stay at particular jobs. So it's very key to try to, as best you can, motivate your employees. And that's not always easy. So if you don't know what they want, you can't motivate them. Okay? And then what does the organization need to do? If my motivation is through rewards and I don't know how to get them, then we have a problem. So if that's what it is, whether it's monetary or recognition or something else, clearly communicate how that's done. Fair and trustworthy. If the same employee gets Employee of the Month every month without fail, deserved or not, then what's our motivation to try? Because we're always going to lose to Bob. So consistency, consistency, consistency. So, when we look at things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all these different theories, they're there for a reason. Because, as I said, motivating people based on different needs is difficult. You kind of have to understand what they are. The basics like survival, but then also belonging. The formal work groups in your department, in your division, and then informal work groups that you develop just from randomly meeting people at work. I ask you if you're friends with the people you work with. Do you hang out with them outside of work? Those kinds of groups. And then, again, how they share that stuff. How do you recognize employee service? Hey, someone's been here 10 years. What do we do for that? And then what do we do for the person who has moved up through the ranks and now it has achieved a different level in management, supervision, ownership, whatever it is. So, those things are there for everyone. And it's not like when you interview them, they're going to clearly lay those out. But if we keep them in the same position, listen, some people don't want to get promoted. And some people want to stay where they are as long as they can, but they're usually the exception and not the rule. So it's figuring out the individual needs of the first person. Look, I have to keep my lights on this month. I have to pay my bills. I have kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. What are those different levels? And they can change, obviously, over time. Things that we talk about from a financial standpoint, yes, money's good. Money's a motivator. For some of you, it may be the motivator. And that can obviously change over time. I mean, I've gone through different cycles in my life, and I can tell you that money was definitely up there for quite a bit of it. So these different things that you look at, what is the thing? I worked in a small college town, and we had great employees, but those employees weren't very loyal because they were in college. And when they were done, they were going to move out of this small town. So their motivation was money. So anytime a new place opened up, even though they loved working for company A, they left because they knew they could make more tips at the new place that opened up because more people were going to try it. I was in a place that per capita had more restaurants in it than most places in the U.S. So it was like, hey, listen, we love working here, but we know we're just going to make a ton more money over there, so goodbye. That was tough. So you look at all these different reasons. And, it's very important to see, what it is from a reward standpoint that people are going to want. It's nice to get a merit raise every year if you work in academics. It doesn't usually happen that much anymore, but it'd be great if you knew you could. When you do things well, it is crucial to recognize that. So how we do that is depending on how the organization does that. And you can look at all those examples of informal programs, cultural values of this organization stands for this. And we're recognizing JB because he did a fantastic job yesterday at the front desk of demonstrating that by this. Pretty informal, but the employee will feel very good about that. Cash and symbolic rewards. There's value in both, and I know a lot of people would kind of roll their eyes at that and say, no, cash is king. But, I have a colleague at an old university who got a 25-year pin for service, and he was in a very select group at that university to have been there 25 years. That was a big deal to have that pin on his jacket. And everybody looked at it like, that's impressive. Not that it was a terrible place to work for, but just the fact that someone had been there that long and done such a great job meant a lot to him and also meant a lot to the organization. It was a very big deal. Making the job fun. Let's face it, a lot of what we do in our industry is repetitive. Day after day, we have to come in and do X, Y, and Z. So what is it that we can do that makes it fun? You have fun every day that you go into work? I hope that you do. If you don't, how do we fix that problem? The problem for me is that when I come in every day, I have to do this. Okay, can we change that so that it's not a problem for you every day? Because we're starting to see from our employees that this becomes an issue. And the negative aspects of your job, I would say that for most of us, there is probably one thing, if you thought about it, you could say to yourself, yeah, this is the part of my job that kind of stinks. So how do we help you make it not stink? How do we make it better? Again, the customer expectations. If they see us having fun, they're probably going to have fun. And it's like, man, this must be a really cool place to work. And you've probably been in places like that. Now, was it all a show? I don't know. I hope not. But you go, this looks like a pretty cool place to work. Everybody seems to be having a good time. And that is, that helps us recruit employees. When we talk about empowerment, this is extremely important from the standpoint of you don't have to turn around and find somebody to ask them if it's okay to do something. Now you see that last thing there, achieving the company's mission. That is what becomes critical, is just on a whim you're going to do this because it is, hey, you've given me the power to make a decision with, an asterisk, limitations, but it's going to help the customer, the guest, okay? And I feel like this is something I can do that I take responsibility for. So, hey, we trust you to do this because our ultimate goal as a company is this. So that's very, very important. Now, to do it right, as you can see, you have to have things in place. And I think probably the last thing is the managerial buy-in is the most important thing. If I tell you that I'm empowering you to do something and then I come back and I see you an hour later and you go, hey, guess what I just did? And I go, why in the world did you do that? Then there is no buy-in. So, when I train you and I say, look, guest satisfaction is our ultimate goal, let me tell you what I mean by that. If we hit a certain point where you need to make a decision that is monetary, whatever it's going to be, then yeah, you may need to come find me. But up to this point, you do what has to be done. And I'm never going to fault you for doing that. I'm never going to get upset with you for doing that. We may go back later and talk about how we can avoid doing that again in the future. But do what it takes to satisfy the guest. And then that goes along with the incentives and how you measure and all these different things. But if you train from the beginning and people know what's expected of them, it's going to be a lot better. Limitations of empowerment is you empower people and they do pretty much whatever they want. And then there is no structure. And of course, then they feel like they don't have to ask for anything. They know exactly what they need to do, how much or how little you empower them. So those are some things to look at. But again, I'd say the pros definitely outweigh the cons. The power of positive reinforcement. You can read about the example of the buffet, which is pretty much a classic example. Telling them one thing and then getting mad at them for doing something else that they then feel is the most important thing that needs to be done. Or they're going to get in trouble. And it sacrificed the main goal of why the person was hired in the first place. Expectancy theory, again, relate employee rewards to performance. So having a performance level that's achievable is key. not so hard that you can't achieve it. And once you get it, are you getting rewarded for that achievement? Because if you're not, what's the point of doing it, right? There is no point. It's ridiculous. And again, self-efficacy, again, is knowledge, skills, and abilities are sufficient to perform at the desired level with trust and then the value that goes along with it. Role-playing and Disney cast members and role conflicts, you can read a lot about this. And again, the conflict becomes when you're not sure what you're supposed to do. Then you have serious issues. So clarify it, role-playing, emotional labor, all those things we've kind of talked about before. You will see SMART goals, if you haven't already, more than once in your career. And you can think that it's cheesy, but if you follow them, it is right. Specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound. Everything's laid out for you in these goals. You know what to do, how you can measure it, how you can achieve it, and then how long you have to do it. Very, very important. And again, MBO is each employee setting specific and measurable goals and then using that achievement as a key driver for their performance assessment. MBO has been around forever. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just been around forever. You probably know about it. Authority acceptance. If we accept it, you have to look at these things. Okay? Just because I say I'm the boss, well, doesn't necessarily mean that you accept my authority. So it is consistency, and we talked about this before. And again, understanding and why you accept the direction. All those things that are important. Okay? And then compliance and directives. Clear communication through every relationship is, just because the person at the top says it, then how is it communicated to, for lack of a better word, the bottom? What is the deal with the directives? And again, how that factors into the overall picture becomes very, very important. Again, I don't insult or tell anybody, because I know that you've probably heard about this before, but equity theory, we talk about that. You've probably, and I shouldn't say you've heard about it, you know about it. I would assume that you've read about equity theory. If not, it's been around forever, and equity is exactly what you think it is. So you always want to make sure that we have the equitable relationship going on there. Justice in the workplace. If you look up the different types, again, it's what you think. It's justice. It is managing it. It's being fair. It's being consistent. I can tell you that, if you think I'm skirting over this stuff, it's important that you read it. It's important. You will get tested on it. But the consistency issue always comes up because most organizations that I've worked in, and probably a lot of organizations you've worked in the past, and I hope that you still don't work there now, but you might, is fairness and consistency. And if I know I can be late and not get in trouble when this manager's working, but I can't be late when this other manager's working or I'm going to get in trouble, there's an issue there. Okay? There's a big, big issue there. And listen, be late. I don't blame you. Managing and leading, listen, when you start to read these books, and there's a lot of great books out there about leaders and managers, there's a difference. Okay? And I would not say that I think anybody can manage, but a lot of people can. But that's different than leading. And again, behavioral integrity. Especially if you are hiring a bunch of young people and you're new and you're just getting started out, look, it's going to be that you follow my lead, you do what I do. So how do I act? I've had plenty of bosses that embarrassed themselves that were supposed to be my leaders, and it backfired because they were not leading the way they should. Do satisfied employees perform well? Most of them do. High performers satisfied. It's tough with very high performers to keep them satisfied all the time, but yes, our customers are satisfied. High performers also satisfied. Environment. And that connection of how that works out and how we consistently motivate people. Everybody's different. And because everybody's different, motivational techniques are going to be different for different people. That is part of, as you grow, being a leader, is understanding what motivates person A, person B, person C, person D. Think about everybody in this class, myself included, different needs.